Here we go. Would you mind saying the date?
Yeah, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting Tuesday, June 4th, 2024.
Perfect. 6:03. Bill Marin is not here. Kyle Oberketter.
Here.
Eric Vozick is not here. Rob Levitt, not here. Cindy Hirschfield.
Here.
Katie Hostetler.
Here.
Mike Horvath.
Here.
Bob Kaplan is not here. And Ben Fierstein.
Here.
Great. Excellent. You have a quorum.
Great. We'll move on to item 2A, public hearing on 168 Original Road minor subdivision application.
Staff will introduce that item for you.
Don't we need to vote on?
Oh, sorry, yes. Looking.
Yeah,
We're so smart.
do we need to switch seats?
Minutes, right?
Where's that?
So tonight, since we don't have our normal chair or vice chair present, we need P&Z to vote on a chair for the evening. So would anybody like to nominate a fellow chair member or themselves?
I nominate Mike Horvath.
You, Katie.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Glad to be here. Okay, now we'll move on to item 2A, public hearing at 168 Original Road minor subdivision application.
Perfect.
And I believe we have a P&Z member that
Oh, yes.
is interested in recusing yourself.
Yes, I have a existing relationship, so I will recuse myself.
Thank you, Ben.
Let me please share my screen here, just a quick second. And Michael, if you want to come up to the applicant table, please. Great.
Good evening.
Okay, thank you. We have Michael Fox with us this evening, who is the applicant. This is a public hearing on an application submitted by Mr. Fox requesting minor subdivision, slope review, community housing review, and site plan review to subdivide the property located at 168 Original Road to construct a new single-family house and associated infrastructure on the vacant lot that's proposed to be created. The subject property, as I noted, is 168 Original Road. Contains approximately a 0.9 acre lot. It contains a half duplex on the lot, and the other half of the duplex being on the adjacent property to the west. It contains 30% slopes and is zoned R2. And the proposal is to subdivide the property into two lots of approximately 20,000 square feet each. On the lower portion of the lot to be created, it's proposed to be known as B2 and will contain the existing half a duplex that's currently on the lot. And then on the second lot that is proposed, which is known as Lot B3 in the application, it's proposed on the upper portion of the property nearest Original Road, and it's proposed for a new single-family residence to be constructed. The new house is proposed at 3,999 square feet, and the proposed utilities for the residence are to come from Original Lane down at the south end of the site, or the lower end of the site. And they're proposed to go up through the property, and there's proposed to be easements across Lot B2 for those utilities. The applicant has proposed that when the half of duplex is to be redeveloped in the future, that it would need to meet the R2 zone district requirements. Additionally, the applicant has proposed to pay cash in lieu of affordable housing mitigation. And the review process that's outlined in your staff memo requires a council review. But since the applicant has proposed to combine the subdivision review with a slope review and a site plan review, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall make a recommendation on all those items to the town council. This application was originally heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission in September of last year, and staff and P&Z had some concerns at that time. So the applicant has revised the application, and it was renoticed for new public hearing. So in reviewing the revised application, staff identified a series of discussion items that are in your packet materials. And so we'd like to go through those this evening. The first being consistency with the master plan. The property identified on the future land use map as existing residential in the master plan, and it's in the town's urban growth boundary. In the single-family typology, it is located, and it also has a hillside overlay. The master plan includes goals of increasing density in appropriate locations, and staff believes that the subdivision request is generally acceptable if wildfire mitigation is adequately addressed and vegetation removal is mitigated. In terms of other discussion items, you have consistency with the surrounding area. The applicants originally proposed a 4,550 square foot house on the new site. While it is true that there are some larger houses close to 5,000 square feet on the upper portion of Original Road, the majority of the residences on the lower end of Original Road and in the Original Lane area are within the 2,000 to 4,000 gross square foot range. And so the applicants at the September meeting provided a map identifying the various square footages of the houses in the area. And staff also provided a map of the lower area, which you have in your packet. And at that time in September, staff recommended that the applicant reduce the square footage to somewhere between the 3,000 and 3,500 square foot range based on this mapping. At that time, the Planning and Zoning Commission agreed that there should be reductions in square footage, and so the applicant revised the application to 3,999 gross square feet. The applicant also erected story poles and provided photo simulations that are in your packet for review. They give a better kind of insight into the extent that the new residence could be seen from the public realms of Highway 82. And judging by the story poles and examination of them, staff believes that there would be limited visual impact from Highway 82 for the residents. Other topics included the affordable housing mitigation. Typically, in the town code, the creation of 3 or fewer new single-family houses that do not exceed 3,000 total square foot would be exempt from affordable housing mitigation. However, because the applicant is proposing a residence that would be greater than 3,000 square foot, they would be required to mitigate for affordable housing, and so they've proposed to provide cash in lieu for the affordable housing mitigation. That's discretionary on the part of P&Z and Town Council ultimately, and so there's a draft condition included in your conditions that the applicant be required to pay that at the time of permit issuance. Other discussion items include compliance with the R2 zone district. The applicant's proposed residence on Lot B3 would meet the setback requirements, would also meet the height and satisfy the floor area of the R2 zone district. And then staff has conditions that if the half duplex on Lot B2 were ever redeveloped, that it would have to meet the setbacks of the R2 zone district and be a single-family house. Other topics included the slope review. There are some 30% slopes on the site, and the applicant has tried to avoid those to the greatest extent possible. Staff has included draft conditions that For tree removal, they would require a tree removal permit and be required to mitigate for the trees removed. Also, there's conditions requiring terracing of retaining walls. Related to retaining walls, there was a concern by the Planning and Zoning Commission staff at the September meetings that the applicant was proposing a significant retaining wall on the lower edge of the new single-family house. And based on those concerns, the applicant removed that retaining wall from their proposal. They had originally proposed to create kind of a flatter yard area below the house, and so they've removed that from the application. There are also conditions related to being required to provide non-reflective materials on the house, as well as dark earth tone colors to help it blend. These are typical conditions of the slope review requirements that are applied by staff. There was also concerns about the utilities, and there was request for more information be provided on the utilities. And so the applicants have done more work in terms of their engineer working with Mid-Valley Metro District. As noted, Mid-Valley Metro District is requiring that the utilities come up from original lane. And so Mid-Valley Metro felt that it was appropriate to bring those utilities up because they aren't certain of the condition of the water and sewer lines that are in original road at the top of the site. And so staff has included conditions requiring that any disturbed areas be revegetated and that any easements be granted across B2 to get to this new single-family house. But as I noted, there was questions in September about the extent of disturbance. And so the applicant's engineer has done some work and identified that they feel that they would only need two 2-foot wide trenches to come up the hill. And they've proposed to use fill with crushed rock to limit the need for the overdig. And staff consulted with Mid-Valley Metro District on that concept, and Mid-Valley Metro District thought that that was an appropriate way to go in terms of their utilities. Other topics for P&Z's consideration included soils. The suitability of soils was of concern to the Planning and Zoning Commission during the September review. There is a preliminary geotechnical report that's on page 81 of your packet that was done by Kumar and Associates. It finds that a foundation should be able to be designed with foundation designs typical of recent houses in the area, including the house across the street, which is 174 Original Road. There is a condition that staff has included that would require prior to permit issuance, a final geotechnical report be provided with specific recommendations on the foundation, and that those recommendations be adhered to. And then finally, there's another topic related to the plat note that exists on the Dillon subdivision plat. This plat note limits the fathering parcel to half a duplex, which is currently existing. The applicants have received the other half of the duplexes consent to remove the plat note. The town attorney has provided an email that is in your packet, which notes that with the consent of the other half duplex owner, the applicant could remove that requirement of the plat, and it's been identified as primarily a town council discussion item because it's discretionary on the council's part per the town attorney. So this evening, staff would recommend taking applicant comments, considering public comments because it is a public hearing, and providing P&Z discussion. If ultimately you're comfortable with making a recommendation to council, staff would recommend that you do so with the conditions that we have in your packet materials. Other decision options for P&Z, if you're not comfortable making a recommendation at this time, you could also table the public hearing and identify what additional information you might need as well. So with that, we have Michael Fox here this evening. Michael, do you have some additional comments for P&Z?
Good evening, everybody. First off, thank you, James. I have spoken for many hours with James on this, and I know there's a lot of work that's gone into this. It's nice to be here in person also, not appearing via Zoom, which I did last September. So just briefly, we tried to really polish our application and take into consideration what you told us at the last meeting in September. We have worked with our neighbors and taken their comments into deep consideration, and we've taken the recommendations of town, and we've basically tried to incorporate and balance application put forth this time that incorporates all of that. I think most notably in this application, we've decreased the size of our home, our proposed home, to a 3,400 square foot and change home with a garage that makes the square footage in total 3,999 square feet. That helps a lot of the concern for different areas of the application that you identified for us before, like impact on the slope and revegetation. And it didn't really change the view lines, which we've taken into account as well, but we did go forth in story pole. I know Ms. Hostetler walked the property with us a month ago and looked at the story poles, and we've left those up on the recommendation of James so that you can look at. We think that the views, we're trying to be very respectful of our neighbors and the views that they have from their properties. We think that the stepping down with this slope, entering on the main level and going down to the bottom level achieves that and is in line with the master plan. I know Mr. Horvath highlighted some issues he had with the utilities and the easements at the last meeting. We have talked about that at length. We think that having the proposed easement that we have in this application is what we would basically plan to present and record. So we've gone forth and created that language. Beyond that, we've identified that it is only two 2-foot trenches that are, I believe, 6 feet deep from my memory, that would need to be done for the two utilities. And they're 8 feet apart. So the lines would be 10 feet apart, but the trenches are about 8 feet apart. Ms. Hostetler at our site visit kind of pointed out that the water line, which was on a more direct path, would have to disturb some vegetation on the lower lot. And we have rerouted that in our final application so that we wouldn't have to disturb vegetation in the lower lot. No vegetation would be disturbed through the easement area and would really just be on the upper lot, which we would permit and revegetate for. And other than that, I've tried to be as neighborly as possible through this. I know we have most of Original Road here, it seems like that here tonight. And I've talked, I met earlier today with Sandy and Paige, who is a former resident of our next door neighbor's residence. I think we had a really productive conversation. Just our goal here is to be as collaborative as possible so that we can do what we would like to do and, build what I think is not only a beautiful home, but a home that's in line with our community and the master plan, but also really collaborate with our neighbors to be respectful of them. They, have lived here a long time and really care about this neighborhood as well. So I'm hopeful that you'll approve us tonight with the recommendations that James laid out. We have no issue with anything that they're proposing, and so we'd ask for your approval with those recommendations.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for staff or the applicant? Go ahead.
On the housing mitigation, the applicant had written in his letter that I guess it's usually due when the plat is recorded, the payment in lieu, and they're gonna be asking for it to be paid at building permit, is their assumption the reality of the code?
You know, typically, it's required at building permit.
It's typically
issues.
required.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, I guess, on the plat note, if somebody did want to preserve that piece as a single house,
Sure.
what would they have had to do then to keep that without letting the next person just voluntarily remove it? Even if it's a mistake.
Well, I think you could have placed a deed restriction on it. You know, that's probably more of a question for the town attorney, though, unfortunately.
But the town attorney believes that just as long as the current owners agree that they want to remove it, they can remove it.
That's his opinion in
Okay.
the email.
Am I allowed to say anything, or?
At the appropriate time.
I don't have any other questions right now.
Cindy or Katie?
Yeah, I had a question, and this might be, I guess I'm not entirely clear on what the effect of the plat note would be. So would the existing duplex go away with that, or it could go away, or?
It would allow for the subdivision, if they remove the plat note, to create the additional lot. And in the future, if the duplex, the half a duplex, were proposed to be redeveloped and removed, it would have to come back as a single-family house on that lot.
Okay. So this is a question for staff. Are we able to require that half duplex on the property be available as a rental property? No, okay, I was just curious. Okay, that's it.
I don't have any questions.
I have one more, sorry. James, in your presentation, you stated that it's a discretionary, that town council has discretion around whether they can pay cash versus have to build the.
Yes,
That's
correct.
town council's decision.
That's
It's not
council's
the
discretion.
applicant's decision to,
Correct.
okay.
Yes.
And so we could approve with our thoughts on that? Okay.
And how, kind of a follow-up question to that, is there a dollar amount that has already been estimated for that fee in lieu?
Yes, so based on the 3,999 square feet, the cash in lieu amount would be 139,495.
And that would go into affordable housing fund for the
Yeah,
town?
and that's based on 25% of the floor area of the new house. And then the town's housing guidelines set that at basically $139 a square foot of mitigation required.
Okay. No more questions? We'll open it up for a public hearing. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes, and introduce yourself and what your address is.
Okay, I'll just come to
Mic on? Hi, my name is Bart Johnson. I'm a local land use lawyer. I'm here on behalf of Sandy Spraker and her husband Rick. They live to the east at 304 Original. We did meet with Michael today on site and had a good site visit. We're hopeful that the discussions we had will lead to kind of an agreement between Michael and Sandy for some mitigation efforts in the way of landscaping, some cooperation on some utility easements that may be beneficial to her, to allow her to connect to the municipal septic or sewer system rather than use a leach field that she has in place. So though we remain concerned about some aspects of the application. We're optimistic, and we feel Michael was cooperative on the site today. So we're particularly concerned about the plat note. We have our own kind of view on that, but we're willing to kind of sit on that for now and hopefully continue discussions. And by the time we get to a final decision with town council, hopefully we'll be in a point of agreement. So that's it, unless anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Scott Brunton, I live at 164 Original Lane, right below the proposed development. Not much to really say about it, except for they did put the story poles up. I noticed this evening, and I know the scenic review is typically from, the main corridor of Highway 82. But from our perspective, when we do look up at the hill, and I counted today, there's 11 homes that I can see. Probably only 3 of them don't break the ridge line. This proposal is one of those that doesn't break it, and I think its location kind of nestles into the hillside and feels pretty comfortable in there. So I would agree and recommend approval. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Tom Newland. I live at 417 Original Road, a little bit up from Michael's place, but outside the 300-foot boundary, so I wasn't notified, but I did see the public notice sign. Anyways, I'm here on behalf of myself and my wife to talk a little bit about the project and just basically say we're in support of Sandy and Rick in this endeavor. And it really didn't seem to be touched on too well with the neighborhood, but this particular site can really affect their view plane and their sense of, just being in the forest. And we really want to see if there's any way we can not just mitigate, but maybe remove that building from where it is if that's necessary. Let's see, I'm just running by my notes. Oh, at the site visit, we were concerned about access off of, why couldn't they come off of the access that the rest of their subdivision is down on Original Lane and not come down off Original Road, and as a result bring the development up further up on the hill. And at the site visit, we were told that couldn't happen, but looking at the topography and stuff, I don't know if that's the case. I just wish maybe a little more planning was put forward to help reduce that impact to our neighbors and bring that down the hill a little more. The legality of all this is questionable to me as well, with the plat node and being able to take that off. It kind of disturbs me really that something like that could happen in the future. You make these promises and agree to things, and then they can be changed a few decades down the road. I know it's not your purview, but it is part of the purview of the town, so I strongly want the town to consider that. Also, the utilities, you can dig 2-foot wide trenches, but there's more involved than that, trust me. You got to get the machinery up there, you've got the spoils. You can make a disturbance impact of up to 20 feet wide, even with 2-foot wide trenches, and I've done it before for many projects. And vegetation up there in particular is extremely hard to replicate. It's a juniper pinyon forest with very little underground. Anything you put down there as far as seed goes is not native and is going to stand out on the hillside as a cut forever. One thing I would think might be an opportunity, I guess I would like to see, and I didn't see in this application, were some covenants. And maybe the covenants could take care of this issue about if it's approved, there's plat notes on this plat as well, the new plat. What's to say those can't be taken away in the future? Maybe the covenants can assure that wouldn't happen and that the town would be, you would have to go through a process with the town to change those. Let's see. Well, the story poles were okay, but they were 6 feet short at the site plan. And, it's kind of hard to really visualize when something that's portrayed is 6 feet short. I guess that's all I had. Thank you. Once again, I'm here to support my neighbors and make sure that they're not impacted as much as possible because we like them. Thanks. Whoops.
Good evening. I'm Christy Levine. I live at 227 Original Road. Actually, I own it. I'm not living there right now, but I own 227 Original Road. I think that I want to be a good neighbor too. So I want to support this family in doing what it is that they want to do. I'm also concerned their house, the driveway of their property is going to be at the bottom of my driveway. I'm a little concerned about what's going to happen to that area. It's a beautiful juniper filled area right now that's untouched. As I mentioned in the September meeting, it's a cross through for animals, and it's beautiful the way that it is. It's a little disheartening to me to think that that's going to be gone. If I could just get my every wish, and I know it's being selfish, I would love for him to have the house that he wants with the access coming from Original Lane. So I know that that's probably not possible, but that would be a dream. His house is not going to impact my view because it's lower. My house is up higher. And again, ultimately, I want him to have the home for him and his family that he wants. My primary and continued concern is the impact on the environment and the plants around that area. But based on what I've seen today, have been improvements made. I don't know if you move down a little, the driveway's longer or what have you, but I guess I'm here to say I'm in support, and I trust that you all know the best way to get to a solve that takes into consideration the environment, the existing environment, the rights of the owner of this property, which is Michael and his family, and then the neighbors. Thank you.
Anyone else in the crowd? Anyone online? Please raise your hand.
Mostly my family.
A lot of foxes. No one online.
Nobody's raising their hand.
Michael, would you like to respond to any of the comments? or-
Sure.
Okay.
I'll just touch on a couple. So actually, when Mr. Newland was at the site visit, we kind of talked about, he brought up access from Original Lane as well. And it spurred some conversation with me and R&R engineers who we've used for our civil engineers. The easement that we are proposing is 25 feet wide, which is required when looking at the overages of the water and sewage. But I cleared with them that that would be plenty of access for large machinery to move up the side of the hill. And
Before you continue, is it
Yes.
possible to bring up the site plan as you talk through this?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt
Okay.
you.
Yeah. The utility, the utility plan that I am discussing is on, it's in two places, but it's on 92. Are you just in your notes, or?
Let me go to the actual packet, just a minute here.
Did you say it's 92?
Yeah, this is also it. It's Because it's in the area of the packet for easements. Sorry. If you go up or down, I could find the upper page.
Well, if you want to keep talking, I'll bring it up.
So it's either 41 or 92.
Or 92.
And I do believe if you went into the number and just typed it, that would work too, but we're almost there. So
If you keep going down to 92.
it's basically the same map, just with the utilities.
There you go.
This is the map I was talking about. So what I was going to say was that while so kind of touching on a couple of things looking at this map, from Mr. Newland's comments and a conversation about access from the bottom, we did realize that some of the initial excavating machinery could be brought up the hillside from below on Original Lane. That's probably the preferred way to access it because there is a steeper slope from above for anybody who's visited it, even though the long-term access would be from above. I thought that was notable in that it would, in some ways, temporarily limit the impact on the neighborhood coming in from above. I also would just point out, even though it's hard to see on this map, there are elevations here, and at the bottom of the lot to the top of the lot, basically the problem with accessing that top portion of the lot from the bottom is the house is sitting 4.5 stories above where Original Lane is. And so we did talk about this hypothetical, but beyond the fact that it's several hundred yards from the bottom, it's 4.5 stories higher. And so it just wasn't realistic for us to access it from the bottom where we were looking at, and there's significant 30% slope kind of in that area. But we'd be looking at switchbacks and just an extremely long and high driveway that wasn't realistic, either practically, financially, and it just didn't make sense engineering wise. So I just wanted to address that based on the comments about access from below. We have thoughtfully talked about this and thought about it, but those were basically the rationale that we came to. There is a letter from the engineer specifically about this in the supporting documentation, which is a more in-depth version of what I just summarized. The second thing that I wanted to bring up for any of you that are looking at this packet is that I did do, I'm an attorney by trade, and I did do a lot of investigation and research into the removal of the plat restriction. So just a little bit of history on the plat restriction. That this is a plat restriction that was put into place by a man, I believe his first name is John, Mr. Dillon, in 1979. When he subdivided the lot, he created our other next door neighbor who's not present. I believe his address is 190 Original Road. It's, for anybody who's been to the site, there's a landscaper who lives there who's put in a bunch of beautiful trees on the corner. He subdivided that lot. In the overall lot where the duplex is, what's now 166 and 168. So there was 2 lots in the 1979 subdivision. The plat restriction was created in 1979. Just to read it again, it says, the construction of only 1 2-family residence shall be permitted on the lot created by this subdivision. So that was 1 lot, 1 home with 2 family residences. And then in 1984, he subdivided again to create the lots that we have now. 166 Original Road, which is our next door neighbors, and 168, which is our half of the duplex. And our position is, based on the research that I've done, is that plat restriction became irrelevant when he subdivided, because it's now 2 lots with 2 family homes. And as a part of the research, and I guess, first off, when I bought the home in 2020 from a woman named Nancy Bosshard, she advertised it as being subdividable. She provided documentations for the plans that she had to subdivide, and she had met with the prior town planner, who I talked to James Lynn about, but I'm blanking on her name. It was a woman, maybe Susan. She had met with Susan, talked about going forward with a subdivision, and ultimately didn't present it to P&Z because of financial reasons, is my understanding. But that's how it was presented to me when I purchased the property. And then I also contacted the Wilsons, because our old next door neighbor used to be Jim Wilson, who worked in the building department for the town of Basalt for many years. And he did not know about the plat restriction, but his position was that it was something that had been mistakenly carried over in 1984. And this was all before I was born. But regardless of that, I'd urge you to take the position of Jeff Conklin and what he's opined, which is that it can be removed with the consent of the homeowners, 166 Original Road, 168, and with your and town council's approval. I also just think it's in line with what the master plan is set forth. You know, our next door neighbor across the street just built, the lot next to them, you're about to hear their presentation. The density in this neighborhood is increasing, and I think that's in line with the master plan as well. So I know there was more brought up, but that's what I can remember and what I have for you. So
Can I ask you a question? Mike,
Sure.
about this one? So you say.
Sorry. Yep. Sure. Oh, maybe.
Oh, boy.
There we go.
So, this is kind of a drive that you put in here to see if you can get up here, or is that the utility easement?
sorry, that's the utility easement. So that's a 25-foot long utility easement, and then the two lines in the center, one is sewage and one is water.
Okay, so I was looking at an access based on the slope maps, which would avoid pretty much, except for one place, 30% grade, which could get you up into an area here down below where the house is. This is flatter in this area than the steepness that's coming off where the house is. In fact, there's 30% slope here if the house overhangs. So I was just, is something like that compatible? It gets it away from your neighbor's view planes, gets it nestled down in the hillside a little bit more, and provides access off of original lane.
There's some,
I think since it's been brought to the table a couple times now about vegetation, environment, corridors, all that other kind of stuff, we do have to realize that if it's being considered to bring a road from original lane up, substantial amounts of vegetation would be removed to get a road and also a building on it. Whereas coming from the top, it's steep, but it's not like any different house that's on that side of the road right now. They're all steep, they've all navigated through that. But this approach would salvage and save substantial amounts of vegetation.
But so the utility company staff will still have a big impact.
But it won't be as close as time
Okay. Guys, if I may, if you're gonna speak, you need to be at a microphone because you're not being picked up. If you're gonna speak, you have to be at a microphone because you're not being picked up.
we appreciate the public comment. I think we're going to close public comment at this time and open up a P&Z discussion.
I have one more question for staff. I mean, the whole, with this R2, the R2 designation, I mean, we are reviewing this application because it's asking for another single-family house to be put on a property that's zoned for basically one family house, correct?
Yes.
Within that R2 designation, is it possible that somebody could come in and want to build like 20 townhomes and two free market houses if they wanted to?
They would have to rezone and make an application to rezone and likely go through a PUD process.
Right, but I mean, it would be the same kind of thing, like we would be reviewing an application and,
It would be reviewing
Okay.
an application.
so one family house is really the lowest impact that could be on this land. So, thanks.
Another question, I think for staff, the staff recommendation is if the bottom lot B2 gets redeveloped it must be a single-family home and meet setbacks.
Yes.
What's the definition of redeveloped? Like, can someone remodel the entire interior of that home and not have to
Yeah,
separate it?
it would be a demo situation if it were
It has to be
demolished.
demoed.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Comments on the application?
I was the only P&Z member who went to the site visit, and I think my main concern was also the vegetation and the impact on the wildlife crossings. But I think having seen the property and how the other houses are situated similarly, and looking, at what the potential driveway coming from original lane would look like, I am in agreement that the impact would be less coming from original road. The driveway coming from original road. That's my only comment.
Cindy?
I guess I would just say that, I think we have an applicant who's shown he's really willing to work with the town and with the neighbors, and went ahead and made adjustments based on our comments last time. So, I don't know, I just want to recognize that.
Thank you.
Question of the applicant, if doing your research, if the original owner had stated that was his desire was to preserve that property as a single-family house, what would your thoughts be?
It's kind of hard for me to step into that hypothetical, but I don't think the original owner, like a former owner, in his opinion about the property matters more than the needs of the town. Times change and the needs of communities change, and I think that is more of an important present consideration. What do we need now? What is the direction of the town now than what it was in 1979? So that's kind of where I turn your attention, but he wasn't writing the Constitution. He was putting a restriction on a plat map.
Okay, and I would want to make sure it's very clear that Conklin's email states that it's not the owner that can do it alone, that town council does need to approve this. I don't think that was clear to myself until I read this one. So, I guess with that statement of what's important to the town, I think my comment to that would be then building affordable housing is what's important to the town, and you're electing not to do that. So, I think that's an interesting statement. That's it.
I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I think you've taken comments and made meaningful changes to the plan. I hear the neighbors about the vegetation and that concern, and I feel like there could be work where we could tie these utilities in and require, 50 feet of water line replacement in a different alignment so that future upgrades could tie into that and keep this house in service during those times and not rip up this entire hillside. That's what really is impactful to everyone who lives in this neighborhood, the view plane, all of that. And so I wish there was a way to work with Mid-Valley Metro and try to achieve that through some sort of master planning with the right-of-way and usage and where the future water line may be and things like that. But I don't know if that's possible at this time. It seems like they've been pretty against that. It just seems like it's having a lasting impact on the lower parcel. It's having a huge impact on the neighborhood, wildlife, and so it seems like utilities we could improve the utilities within original road and make this a better long-term solution and development for the entire community. With that being said, again, I think the applicant's done a good job of trying to limit his impact with the direction we gave him, and so I guess the only other thing I would ask about is we cannot require him to deed restrict the part of the duplex or instead of fee in lieu or anything like that.
You can make that recommendation.
Okay.
So we can recommend a deed restriction, but we can't, you're just saying we can't require rental?
You can't require it to be a rental or for sale.
Okay.
We can't force him to rent or sell his house, but we can ask for a deed restriction.
Okay.
Track there, yeah.
So how does that, if we approve with comments, how does that go to council? Is it just like a cliff note of our comment?
It's the condition of your approval.
And so likely there potentially would be a condition as is shown in the staff memo, and then an alternate condition that council could accept, and that alternate condition would be noted as P&Z's recommendation.
So
How it's usually
it's
done.
more than just a recommendation, it's actually saying 9A would be the way P&Z would prefer to see it.
But then we would all have to agree on the condition, right? It can't just be an individual condition.
Right.
Yeah, it's one condition.
Okay.
So if someone wants to make a motion and test out your approval, and then see if your fellow P&Z members are on board with that, and then you may have more discussion.
So I have a question, if that's okay. So there's a couple of ways that the housing mitigation was presented to me. There was the cash in lieu option. There was an ADU option on the total residence, which we did consider, but was not kind of balancing the considerations of keeping the square footage low was difficult to achieve. And I can't remember the percentage of the home. I think it was 25% of the home. So, like a 1,200 square foot ADU, or I guess alternate deed restriction. I'd have to go back and look at the law. But if there is a recommendation, would I be able to revisit that and either what I just presented at the next phase?
You could respond to that recommendation at council. And if we're sort of at an impasse where we need more information, maybe everybody needs more information, you can certainly table this public hearing, and then everyone can go do more research on what options you want to pursue.
I don't want to table it. I believe the applicant has put a lot of work into it and deserves to get to the next step. So I don't think that would not be my.
I'll just say I would move not to table it either. But I will look at this if that's what you'd like me to do.
I do think it's an interesting concept of deed restricting the duplex on the lower lot versus $139,000. I think the town gets more out of a deed restriction than the $139,000.
So I'd put forward a motion then that the applicant is either to, I guess, build the attainable housing, or do we have an RO option, resident occupied?
Yeah.
So then, or an RO restriction on the half of the duplex. I don't want to cut his legs out on the valuation of the property, of the single value of the townhome. But if it was RO'd, at least it's a local.
I would go for the RO part. I wouldn't go for the requiring to build, because I think that's
It's
a big expense.
So I guess in my mind, the way I think I'm stating this is, council would take this, and then the applicant would have the choice.
So
We're
there-
still lieu in payment, then why not that as well?
To not allow that,
To not allow cash in lieu?
yes.
I don't know if we can do that, because that's part of the town code, isn't it?
Well, at this point, you're making a recommendation on what the conditions are. So you can have a preference, and that's basically what your board is doing, is you're having a preference on the items here. And so if your preference is not to support cash in lieu, but support other mitigation efforts, you can do that. The plus and minus is we don't know if council will follow that or not. Or they'll say, you know what, that's too much hardship, or we do agree, or we don't. So, you know.
I would say that as a point of order, Kyle made a motion, so before you have more discussion, there should be a question as to whether there's a second on his motion.
Okay, so can you repeat what the motion would be?
It would be either mitigate by building, or to put a restriction of an RO restriction on the half of the duplex on that parcel.
Would this be at the building permit phase, or would it be at the recording phase?
If you put the deed restriction on the duplex,
It typically would happen at the recording phase.
I don't necessarily support building more in this area. I think we've toned it back. I would support a motion to put an RO restriction on the duplex.
I would support that.
Same.
So you first have to vote me down, just to be
Okay,
true.
okay.
Just not to take offense. It's fine.
Okay.
is there I guess, yeah, you need to, is there a second on the restriction?
Is there a second?
So Kyle's motion dies.
Okay.
Now you can put your motion forward.
I would put a motion forward to approve the development as is, with a condition of an RO restriction on the lower duplex unit.
I will second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Although I still have one question. Not that it would change my viewpoint,
So,
though, but the reason.
1 second.
Okay.
So that is 4-0 on that? A vote 4-0 for approval? Okay. We're jumping around fast.
The reason I originally asked about the whole plat thing and tearing down was because I was thinking along these terms. So if it can be torn down, how does that fit into what we're just saying? Is it just a temporary Band-Aid for a couple of years, or which is better, which is kind of what we need right now anyway? I just kind of want to make sure I understand the implications. So we're putting an RO on something that may not exist in a few years. Okay.
Well,
Does
typically,
the RO
no.
live with the parcel?
yeah, typically the RO restriction lives with the parcel.
So if he
On the
sells it,
parcel.
if he sells that side, there's an RO restriction on it.
Okay, on the land, not the building.
On the unit,
On the parcel that's there.
Yeah,
If
so
you were
if
to
it
knock
gets,
it down, it
you would
still
have to.
would have an RO.
Oh, okay, all right.
but that could be a point for discussion.
Yeah,
at the council
it's
level.
only it's kind of our comment.
Do we need to make another motion to approve, or are we approved?
Is that the only condition you want to modify, or are you good with everything else?
I am.
Okay, so then, sorry, we're a little clumsy tonight on this. So then, someone needs to make a motion to approve the application as with the suggested amendment to the conditions.
So I'll make a motion to approve it with the additional recommendation of the RO restriction.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On to the next one will be public hearing at 172 Original Road, minor site plan review and slope review. We'll start with staff comments. Okay.
I'm gonna grab Ben before we start.
Okay.
Yeah, he's probably wondering
Oh,
what
yeah.
the hell's going on.
Yeah. Probably thinks we forgot about him.
And if you'd like to come up.
Here we go.
Okay. So we do have the applicants here this evening on this application. And so this is a public hearing on an application for site plan review and slope review to construct a single-family residence at 172 Original Road on Lot 3 of the Broughton subdivision. And you can see it right here on the vicinity map. You've got Original Road coming up, Original Lane coming across, and you've got one vacant lot left in the subdivision. The lot was created as part of the Broughton Minor subdivision. The 2017 subdivision approvals delegated a review of the site plan and slope review on a specific residence design for the lots in the subdivision to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So this application would stop at P&Z, and so it wouldn't be a recommendation to council. There was a site plan review that was granted in 2022 for a residence design on this site, but the new owners would like a different residence design, so that's why we're back in front of the P&Z. Proposal is to construct a single-family residence of 2,693 square feet, and it's on the vacant lot, which is 0.49 acres. The lot is relatively flat on the area adjacent to Original Lane, and then starts to slope significantly as you get on the last 1/3 of the property, going down to the Pine Ridge townhomes. The water and sewer mains for service to the site are in Original Lane. They were extended as part of the subdivision improvements that were made by Scott Broughton when the subdivision was approved. In reviewing the application, staff identified a series of discussion items, and they're evaluated in your staff memo. They include consistency with the master plan. In the future land use map in the master plan, the site is existing residential, and so the use is consistent with that designation. Staff has also listed the goals in which it complies with in your staff memo. They promote affordability of living, encourage developers to build smaller homes on smaller lots, and also utilize fire hardening materials and fire resistant site planning. In terms of consistency with the neighborhood and the neighborhood character, the majority of the reason for this review by the P&Z is to ensure consistency with neighborhood character. And so in reviewing the proposal, staff believes that the proposal uses traditionally pitched shed roofs in simple forms, which are encouraged by the slope review standards. In addition, there is consistency with the dimensional requirements. As noted, the residence is well below the maximum floor area of 3,000 square feet. It's also below the maximum building height of 28 foot to the ridge and 24 foot to the midpoint of the roof. And the applicant has also worked on reducing the massing since the proposal was originally submitted based on some comments from the adjacent neighbors. Staff finds that the residence complies with the dimensional requirements of the subdivision. And as noted, the applicant has proposed to site the structure on the portion of the site adjacent to original lane, which is the flattest portion of the site. In addition, staff believes that it's appropriately sited to avoid the steep slopes on the western 1/3 of the site. There's also a requirement in the draft conditions that the applicant provide a final landscaping plan for approval by the town planner as part of the building permit submittal. In terms of building materials, the applicant has proposed metal siding and vertical treated wood siding, as well as a metal roof. And so those materials would meet the town code requirements for wildfire mitigation as long as the wood was treated. Also, we have conditions that the applicant use dark earth tone colors and non-reflective materials to help it blend with the hillside. Other topics included green building. The applicants are required to meet the sustainable building regulations, and that was a requirement of the subdivision as well. So this evening, staff would suggest hearing applicant comments, taking public comments because it is a public hearing, and then providing P&Z discussion. Ultimately, there is a resolution for consideration in your packet. We have a resolution because this is the final review. It wouldn't be a recommendation to council, so we would do a resolution for that. Ultimately, if you're comfortable, you could make a motion to approve. Alternatively, if you have questions and need for more information, you could also table the hearing. We do have the applicants here this evening. We've got Ben Coons and we've got the property owner who's on Zoom here.
It's me right here.
Ah, I'm sorry, Michael.
That's my father.
Yeah. And we've got Ben Coons who's also online, and I'll allow him to talk as well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, thanks for the intro. I don't think I have too much more to say here, except, I'm happy to respond to questions and comments. I think one thing I would add is another neighborhood concern is the facade to the northwest and the materials there. And since I submitted this packet, I've had some communication with neighbors about adding two different materials to break up that northwest facade, which is kind of the largest single wall plane. So, minor, but I guess I'd say that to just in case some of the neighbors are in attendance, and that can either be part of the approvals or just taken as word from me. So I think the materials are, again, they're very similar to the one shown, but the current plan shows one dark middle on the whole side, and then I would propose, and I've talked to owners about this, about having partially metal and partially composite board in a similar tone, but slightly different material layout. So just to help break up that facade somewhat.
And I'm sorry, Ben, what facade are you referring to?
Yeah, if you go to the elevation page, it's on the west facade there. So scroll that one right there, bottom of the page. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm proposing that instead of it all being dark metal siding, that it would be a combination of dark metal siding and dark composite siding.
Combination of dark
So-
metal and dark composite
I
siding.
missed who Ben is.
Ben's the architect.
The architect, okay.
I thought there was an intro there. I didn't give an intro. Ryan is the owner, and with Gina, his wife, and I am the architect.
Okay.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think everything else was covered. I'm happy to field any questions if there are any, or can bounce back to that in public comment.
All right. Any other applicant comments or?
I would just say my wife and I are very excited to be part of the neighborhood. Scott and others have been very kind in offering their comments, and we are eager to join the neighborhood with an all-electric, home that will be powered by solar PV, and we think that these smaller all-electric homes are what Basalt needs for the future. So, yeah, we're kindly seeking your motion to approve, and it would be great to just proceed with this project.
All right. Thank you. Public comment.
Well,
Don't we get to make
then you
comment?
guys get to do questions first. Sorry.
P&Z comments for staff.
What technically defines then two homes on a property? Like, this has a detached garage with a studio?
Yeah. It basically, the way the town code defines a residential unit is with a full kitchen facility. So every full kitchen facility is considered a dwelling unit.
And by law, full kitchen requires I think most people get around it because they don't have
Typically don't have a stove or cooktop, and typically you're not allowed to have more than a small fridge, smaller than 5 cubic feet.
Okay. Does this code it allows for an ADU? Or not?
The
Does the
subdivision
zoning?
doesn't permit an ADU, no.
So then what is this?
It's considered a studio, basically. We have quite a few of them around town that aren't officially ADUs and not officially dwelling units,
Art studios or studios.
or extra bedroom as well.
I mean, it's got a full kitchen in here, and like this is a
Well, that would probably be a question of the applicant. Ben, would you like to explain what's included in the studio?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can see it there. It's in the plans. Trying not to. I think it'll show it as a shell because I know this is a touchy subject, but I think it's also consistent with a lot of houses in Basalt and in the neighborhood. There is a bedroom, a bathroom, an open space there. Can be used as a guest bedroom. Could certainly be used as a home office. Could be used as an art studio. And so I think it's all of those uses are within the allowed uses of this place.
Does the size of that they're quoting include this space?
does.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so I guess you could, I mean, the simplest answer is it's a guest bedroom. It could just be labeled strictly as that, or even a master bedroom as a separate unit. I think there's a number of different uses for the space. It happens to be that Gina's parents live in Colombia and come to visit, and if they did, they would stay here, which is also within the allowed uses of the code.
I didn't catch that last part.
Don't we just want to ask the applicant
Yeah, sure.
what the use is?
Well,
Do you want to go first?
I understand what the applicant wants to, no offense, what you guys are trying to do, but it's also seems very apparent what's being built here, proposed.
Well, what we are saying is my wife's family is from Colombia, another country, and they often come to visit us, and that would be a space in which they could stay. And the same is true for my family as well. I suspect my parents could move in with us at some point, and that would be a great space for them to be.
And please, no offense, but that is an accessory dwelling unit, is what that would become.
It would just be another bedroom that they're in.
Okay.
Yeah, I think accessory dwelling unit is pretty well defined, and this conversation has happened a number of times. And a detached bedroom bathroom is allowed in the code. I think there's a lot of precedent for that.
Okay. Thank you.
If Gina's parents were to come and stay with Ryan and Gina for a month, I certainly would, if my parents wanted to come and stay with me for a month, I would like them to be in this bedroom and not in the bedroom that's directly across the hall, directly below. Especially if I was a young family, maybe having a child, and so there's many reasons why this makes sense, and is also many reasons why it's allowed within the code.
But question for staff, this does not count as an ADU or obfuscate their need for fee in lieu or any of those offsets.
That's correct if it doesn't have a full kitchen facility based on the definition of the code.
But you're saying it does have a full kitchen.
I am saying
It sounds confusing.
it does not have a stove in it as shown in the drawings today, so it technically would not be.
Got it, okay.
To me, this feels there's some precedent I feel like is being shown here. That is a slippery slope.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? If there are no more questions, we will open it up to a public hearing. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes and introduce yourself.
Scott Broughton, neighbor to the west of this proposed application. I do want to say that thank you to Ben and Ryan. They've been extremely helpful in listening to comments through the reviews and stuff like that. They've responded admirably about reducing scale, reducing some initial proposed materials of reflectivity, stuff like that. Ben, thank you so much for listening to my latest comments about articulating the west wall with some optional materials, so that it kind of breaks up just the big black mass. So I would recommend approval of this. Also, as an architect, I think what they're proposing, no matter what the studio is being interpreted as, it's also creating stackable space, and it's creating a smaller footprint, which I think is more respectful to the land and the development where they're proposing the siting of the project. So I think it's going to be great. I'd love to have them as neighbors. Thank you.
Anyone online or?
It's a weird layout of this hearing because I just applied, but this is Michael Fox for the record, but our duplex, half duplex, is probably the most impacted property based on this build from a view perspective. I'm also completely, I don't know Ryan or Ben, I've never met you before, nice to meet you, but I would move you guys to approve. I think what they've proposed steps down into the hill. We watched Chessie and Tyler Barletta, who's their next door neighbor, and the other people who purchased from the Broughton subdivision build. They built a wonderful home for them. And I have no concerns over the view. And just as to the comments made about a studio or no studio, I just think from my perspective, Basalt needs increased density. There's no community housing requirement for them because when the Broughton subdivided, they limited these lots to 3,000 square feet, and this house is within that. And so I don't know that it's going to be used for increased density for people who will be living here, but if it was sold in the future, it could be done for that. I think that's a good thing. So those are my comments.
I would say this is the technical problem. Is it,
Can we ask if there's anybody online first
Sure.
before we close the comments? Is there anybody online that would like to make comments? If so, please raise your hand. It looks like we've got one comment online. Ginny, you can speak now to the P&Z. If you unmute your computer.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, yes, my name is Gina Benjumea, and I'm right now from Colombia, so that's the reason why I couldn't join in person. Thank you, everybody, to be considering our project and to comment on the studio section of the house. Yes, so my family usually visit us between 2 or 4 weeks or even more, and as we're planning to have kids, we will definitely need help with them, especially at the start. So this is one of the reasons why we want to have it separately from us. And same thing for Ryan's parents, they live in the East Coast. And second, for the future, as the children grow, I also like to do art, and I would like to invest time on that. And right now we live in a really small area, so I haven't been able to pursue that, but I would like to retire on that side for my art. Those are my comments, and thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else online that would like to make comments?
Ben has his hand raised.
Ben's the architect.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have
I
more
don't know if
comments?
he had anything else
That
to say.
was a remnant of the earlier hand raise to get signed in. Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, we'll close the public hearing. P&Z discussion, we'll start with Kyle.
I would just say that I'm all support for ADUs in small spaces, but I guess we should fundamentally think as a town of then changing the code so that people can build these smaller spaces and do what they want with them. And so that would be my comment.
Cindy?
My only comment is I think it's interesting that you're right across the road, yet this project doesn't seem as controversial in the neighborhood for whatever reason. That's it.
Yeah, no comments. I mean, having seen that site as well, it makes sense that it's a little less controversial just given the property and the way the land is. But yeah, I think it looks like a great house.
My only comment has to do with this access and utility easement. I don't know the history on Lot 4 in the subdivision, and I'm just curious if that easement and the way you've designed your parking would affect them in the future, or if there is, if that pigeonholes their design or anything to that extent. But That's it.
Can I speak to that?
Ben, do you want to hop in there?
Yeah, yes, I can comment on that. Lot 4 is already built, fully built out. And so we will run the utilities. And there sounds like they're not getting public comment. They're being like super friendly, gives a tour of the house.
Great.
Shared with me the architectural plans. Incidentally, it was done by a friend of mine. And they have just been like good neighbors, and we'll keep that up. So as far as the change to the utilities, we will, there'll be no conflict there because that is RDA.
Excellent. Thank you.
No real comment. I think it fits into the character of the neighborhood and is developed responsibly, so I support it. Is there a motion to approve as is?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Well, sorry, since this is a
Oh.
resolution, I can't read your names.
Perfect.
Oh, okay.
Kyle Oberketter,
Yes.
Cindy Hirschfield,
Yes.
Katie Hostetler,
Yes.
Mike Horvath,
Yes.
and Ben Fairstein.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next is a public hearing on code amendments to Town Chapter 16 zoning.
Yes, let me please share my screen here, just a quick second. There we go. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay. Yes, this is a public hearing to consider two code amendments proposed by staff. The first amendment changes the definition of family in section 16-4 of the town code. And it also changes code section 16-203A1 to remove the occupancy limit that we have in the town code for allowing no more than 3 unrelated people in a dwelling unit. And the reason for this proposed code amendment is that there was just a bill passed by the state legislature that now prohibits occupancy limits being provided by local government jurisdictions. And so the proposed amendment we have here would get rid of that limitation that we have to make it consistent with state law. The second amendment is a cleanup amendment, and it's to Town Code Section 16-22.5. And this is the section that has a town-wide maximum floor area, gross floor area of 5,000 square feet. And basically, it's been interpreted over time as being 5,000 square foot per lot. And the town attorneys recommended that we add some language to make it clarified that it's in the R1 and R2 zone district, it's for the lot and not per dwelling unit. So
Per what? What did you say there, James?
not per dwelling unit, per
Okay.
lot.
Per lot.
Yeah. And once again, that's how it's been interpreted, but the town attorney suggested adding some clarifying language. So we have proposed that in the amendments that you have before you. It is a public hearing, so we'd recommend taking public comments and then providing commission discussion. And if you're comfortable, you could make a recommendation to the council.
Any questions for staff before we move to public comment?
Yes, so House Bill 241007 has passed,
Yes.
and therefore our current code is in direct conflict with this.
That's correct.
Do we have a choice?
No.
No.
Part of that state bill is related to a variety of affordable housing measures
Yep.
to make housing generally more accessible.
Okay. Does this affect HOAs?
We asked that question of the town attorney, and the town attorney has expressed that HOAs can have restrictive covenants that.
Can or cannot? Yes.
Can,
Can,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, but municipalities cannot.
Municipalities cannot, okay.
Any other questions?
James, I guess just from your definition or your description of the change in floor area
Yeah,
versus, I guess, what's on page 175,
yes.
seems, I guess, how would this make it more clear that it's per lot?
The other zone districts have maximum floor area ratios in them, except for the R1 and the R2 zone districts. And so the 5,000 square foot limitation gets undercut in the other zone districts by the floor area ratio limits. Most of them are 0.35 to 1 floor area ratios. And so we're clarifying that in the R1 and R2 zone districts, they're not allowed more than 5,000 total square feet of floor area on those lots, whereas in the other zone districts, it identifies that you can't have a dwelling unit of more than 5,000 square feet in the first sentence there.
Regardless of zone. Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Moving on to public comment. Anyone online?
So we
We'll say no.
do not have anybody online.
All right, closing public comment. P&Z discussion. Ben, you want to start?
No comments.
Yeah, no comments.
It's interesting that the HOA is exempt from that state legislation because it seems like the majority of housing now is part of an HOA. So I wonder what difference it's, what impact it's really going to have.
Don't know. Not sure.
I suspect that changes are coming.
Yeah. That's it.
No comments.
No comments.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Is that what I'm?
All in favor, or do we have to roll call?
It's not a reso,
Oh,
so
it's
you can
not
just do a
so
voice
we're
vote.
good to go. Roll, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, commissioner comments and staff updates.
Usually have a laundry list for you all, but I don't today except for first concert starts June
16th.
Thank you. So, June 19th.
Oh,
It's a
dang.
Wednesday. I know, June 16th is Father's Day,
Oh.
and that's when farmer's market starts. And then
Oh,
June
yeah.
19th is Wednesday,
Oh, that's what I
which
thought.
also happens to be Juneteenth. Town hall will be closed, but we are having the concert that night, so that'll be wonderful. And then stay tuned on June 26th is the second Wednesday concert of June. It's also Colorado Bike to Work Day. So we're going to have some bike to work events that morning. And then before the concert, we're working with the library. We're going to have a bike parade. You can decorate your bike, get prizes. Art Base is going to judge. More information about that, but it'll land at the concert. The community recycling event is coming up at the high school. I think it's June 23rd. The community recycling event.
Recycling.
So that's exciting, and if you look on the town's website, the real date is there, but all of the things, electronics, paint, all of the difficult things to recycle will be accepted for free there. And obviously we can see that the streetscape project is cruising forward, hope to be past Alpine Bank early July, and BPAC commissioned a sculpture. It's an elk hair caddisfly sculpture, and it'll be placed outside of Town Hall in the next week.
How big are we talking?
What?
How big are we talking?
How big? The sculpture is on a plinth that's 14 feet tall, and the fly is pretty big. It's really neat. It's really beautiful. It happens, there was an article in the newspaper today about all things that glitter being hosted at the Horologos Gallery, and our artist is part of that exhibit. So,
Who's the artist of the sculpture? No, who is the artist?
I'm going to think of his name here in just a
oh.
second. They didn't write the notes
Is somebody local?
Yeah, he's amazing. He's from Canada, and this sculpture was in Carbondale and is moving here. So super exciting. I think those are the big things going on right now.
Yeah, I think the only one to add is we're working on the Confluence Park intersection right there by 7-Eleven. There's going to be a temporary installation that goes in to kind of barricade off a sidewalk area or access way area for pedestrians going from the Emma Bridge to the corner there where currently, pedestrians have to kind of walk through traffic and park cars. And there's also going to be a temporary installation of kind of a crosswalk from the Emma Bridge through all that asphalt area that's the access to 7-Eleven's parking lot there to kind of better organize where pedestrians are.
Is that going to shift the fisherman parking over into the asphalt space and out of like the...
It's going to push the parking,
Yeah, the goal is part of a Safe Routes to School project. And so it'll be really colorful when it's put in, and we'll try it out. We had hoped to have it installed in May, but that snow was not really helpful for pavement work, so here we are.
How many Basalt Connect vehicles do we have now? I feel like every week I'm like, oh, that's a different vehicle than last week.
I think there's 3.
So 3.
Yeah. And I know that the town's going to be applying for another climate action grant to run it full-time during the summer months again. That's how we paid for that service through the summer last year. Otherwise, it just runs in the morning and in the afternoon.
I have a request. And I know I had mentioned this to you. We spoke maybe after the last meeting or a couple, but I'd like to put in a formal request to have the Western Mountain Regional Housing Authority present to us, P&Z, and maybe even in a combined session with council, because I think it would help. Well, I know it would help me in making decisions related to affordable housing to have some actual data, recent data, to rely on and educate ourselves.
Absolutely, yeah. I heard your request, and we are just shifting who's on that board now as a representative from the town, with Elise Hoddle finishing her council term. What we're planning to do is have the town is currently undergoing an update to our housing guidelines, which also includes recommended policies for the town going forward. That should be coming forward here in July for everyone to review, and P&Z will be invited to review that as well. And then combining that with some work with Western Mountain Regional Housing Coalition. I want to call them WKRP in Cincinnati. It's not very good.
Right. So would that work involve, I would just like them to come and present like they did to the Aspen Rotary a couple of months ago, just what their, they've done a big fact-finding mission
Yeah, absolutely.
for the whole
yeah.
valley. I think that information would be valuable just to see in graphics and hear talked about.
Absolutely, yeah, we're working on that.
Did anything happen with all of the kind of going into affordable housing with the different studies we were looking at between like what Vail was doing, the Silverthorne? Where does all that data collection stand?
Yeah, so that's going into our updated housing guidelines.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so that's where some of that information will come back in recommended policies and potentially land use code changes like for around ADUs or something like that. So that'll come back.
That's actually a report that's being generated by Economic and Planning Systems, EPS, out of Denver. They're the same consultants that did the regional housing study a couple years back. And so they've been working on data collection, they've been working on drafting recommendations, and so those other programs are part of their recommendations as well.
So a lot of it is definitely duplicative on some level, but our study was really specific to Basalt. But yes, that will be coming back. Speaking of affordable housing, we just had a pre-bid meeting yesterday for parcel 2E across from Takah. So that's really exciting. Proposals for that aren't due until July.
Is the daycare gone then, or it could be part of the mixed use part of that?
It's either going to be, we're going to leave that open for some public input on whether it's daycare, community space, flex space, or some other things like that, yeah.
Can it be multi-story? So it could be like daycare on the bottom, apartments on top, or...
Absolutely. Yep. And we have contracted on the parcel adjacent to the rugby field, Z Group and Habitat for Humanity to help design and do the entitlements for that project. So that'll be coming forward in a while. For your preliminary steps there.
Are you still looking at modular for the south side parcels? Or were...
No, we costed those 2 units out, and in the end, stick-built came in cheaper. So we have a contract with R.A. Nelson and Caddis Architecture, and those units are they're designing a duplex. We learned that over there we were able to design more livable floor plans with a duplex that could be more square instead of
shotguns.
long shotgun. Yeah.
I just saw an interesting article, I think in the Colorado Sun, about a big affordable housing project outside of Greeley that Habitat for Humanity is also in on. And it's going to involve 3D printing some houses.
Yeah.
And they said it can be built in 48 hours.
So cool.
It's just not true, unfortunately. So it's such a good idea, but it just does not. If you want to go see the closest one, they're trying to build it in BV, and it's been over
Really?
2 years, and they're still building it.
Really? Well, this one just they showed the wall in process, so I guess it'll be interesting to track and see how long that one takes.
Is it one of the cement 3D printers?
Yeah, they showed it, it was like a giant printer nozzle head, and then it was going along a wall, like shooting out cement, and it was like that high in the picture.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.